Hey guys, it's Jacob with High Point Land Company. Today we're talking about selling farmland from an estate. We get calls to our agents and our offices all the time about selling farmland that's been acquired via estate. We have, if you look at who owns the land in the United States, in the age demographics of who owns that property, and if they're farming it or not, or hunting it or not, a lot of times age of the owner will what'll happen is people will hold on to it for a very, very long time. Their families will hold on to it for a very long time. 100, 150 plus years is common in land ownership. So the situation comes up on a regular basis for selling farmland that has been acquired via estate to the heirs of that estate, usually the children that are the heirs of the estate for their parents that have passed away. So we think it's very important to make sure that these farms are taken care of. I can tell you stories till I'm blue in the face about people that said, I sold my farm, I sold my family's farm for X amount of dollars, and we realized that that was a substantially below market value. The sellers got taken advantage of. The seller sold it to somebody without hiring a professional or even asking any questions, and selling that property that way took that farm and sold it substantially below market value. And that could have, the family, how we feel about it is if the family owned the property for a very long time and they had their blood, sweat, and tears into owning that land. Land ownership is not easy when you're farming, not easy when you're owning the property for decades or centuries, and having to work the land and take care of it. It becomes a very important asset to families. So we think it is very important for the families that benefit from that property sale to be the ones that have worked it and really tried to hold on to that investment for decades or over 100, 150 plus years. Those are the folks that owe the respect of getting the best out of their financial investment that their family has held on to for so long. So we really work hard to make sure that that is respected, even though a farm is sold, and the family wants to sell it, the heirs of the estate want to move on, they want to sell the farm, that is treated with the utmost respect on a marketing perspective, on a financial perspective, on a tax savings perspective, on a planning perspective. There's so many things that go into a high quality land sale. We had registered bidders on an auction today from many states around the country, people that are looking to buy land and farm it themselves, competing with investors, and the amount of time and effort and staff that went into marketing that sale properly compared to somebody selling a farm on their own can really show the difference in a substantial increase in selling the family's farm and treating it with the utmost respect and care for that financial transaction. So how does it work? You acquire a farm via estate. What happens? Not financial advice here, just a disclaimer. Not here to sell you anything. We're in the land real estate business is what we focus on at High Point Land Company, but not financial advice. I just need to say that to make sure that we disclose that I'm not giving you any financial advice or business advice. This is just in our experience what really works well after selling thousands of farms across the United States. So if a family member passes away, it's best to usually have an appraiser do a certified general appraisal on the property to establish a basis at time of death. When somebody passes away, the current law is that the property gets appraised and then you're able to establish a basis with your accountant. Then that'll have a step up in basis. So let's say your family purchased it for $50 an acre and now it's worth $15,000 an acre. The family, the heirs of the estate, if they go about it correctly, can avoid the capital gains tax exposure of the $50,000 to $15,000, which would be a substantial capital gains depending on the size of the property. It saves them that money by giving them a tax advantage of a step up in basis with a certified general appraisal valuation on the farm, and it's inherited up to this level, and now we have a new basis on the farm for the new folks that own it, the heirs of the estate. So you get an appraisal, and that establishes a basis value. We do these appraisals all the time for folks. If you need an appraisal in a state that we're not licensed in or we don't do business in, give one of our offices or agents a call. They'd be happy to send you an appraiser anywhere else in the country. There's different types of appraisers. There's residential, commercial, I mean, like anything else, there's specialty in appraisals. A certified general appraiser that specializes in land and rural property is what you're after to appraise a farm, not necessarily a residential or commercial specialized appraiser, because they might not have access to the best comparable properties and what they've sold for in the market, all the comparable properties compared to some that were just sold and documented on the MLS or documented on this ECRV program or whatever it may be. Look for somebody that's land specific throughout this entire transaction. Those professionals are going to give you the advice that is just invaluable on the topic of land and the difference between one farm and another farm. There's so much that goes into valuing a farm, and somebody that knows that, they do it day in and day out, will be worth their weight in gold to this transaction and to your land sale ultimately. So get an appraisal. Make sure the appraiser is somebody that's qualified to do the business. And then after you get the appraisal, you want to look for a land real estate company. There's a difference in land real estate companies and commercial real estate companies and residential real estate companies and business sale companies. I mean, there's so many niches in the land real estate business or in the real estate business across the entire United States that specialize in different little niches, and those little niches can really pay off when you hire the right professional. So in land, you hire the right professional, you start discussing with them if it makes sense that you think you should work with that individual, you feel comfortable with them, you've called a couple companies to make sure that you feel comfortable and you know what your options are, and then you look at the farm and say, okay, is the recommendation that the company is saying that we should sell it this best way in the market, best sold at listing, sealed bid, auction, online timed auction, live auction with public bidding. I mean, there's a lot of ways to sell farms to a lot of people that you would more than likely be just fine as the buyer of those properties, whether they're an investor or a farmer. There's different reasons people buy land that I could talk about for the next hour, but to keep this simple, selling farmland and estate, make sure the process is selected that is going to benefit the price or the sales timeline that fits you the most. If you want to achieve the highest financial dollar, what's the best way to do that and why? If you want to sell it in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, what's the best way to do that process? We sold a farm today, 2 tracts. Those farms sold for way more at auction, live and online live auction, than they ever would have at a traditional listing or an online timed auction. The live auction with online bidding made that sale a substantial success to the tune of thousands of dollars per acre, times quite a few acres, to ultimately benefit the family financially to sell that property best that individual way. So it has a lot of different ways, and the answer from that also, from which is the best way the farm is sold, might also be to keep the farm. If you talk to a salesperson that specializes in land real estate, don't be afraid to ask them, should we keep the farm? Does it make financial sense for us to keep the farm? What would it rent out for? And what are our options as far as giving this farm to our children, to putting it into a trust, to talking to our professionals, our accountant, our financial advisor, our attorney, and working with the real estate company to figure out maybe that selling it isn't the option. Maybe what we're going to do with the money isn't the best place for us to put that money when we really like land or we really like this farm, and we could hire a farm manager to take care of all the details for us and maybe increase our income substantially by keeping the farm. So don't rule that one out. And anyone that's going to tell you hard and fast the only way to do it is sell the farm and do it this way only, ask a lot of questions. It's really important. You get one shot at selling a great farm that's been in a family for a long, long time and has been well cared for. And if you go about that the wrong way, it can be the difference in a substantial financial reduction in a really difficult transaction that just doesn't need to be dramatic or painful at all. It should be a very easy, well-communicated process that is. You want to work with somebody who's a joy to work with on both sides of the transaction. And whether you're the seller or you're the real estate company, those relationships, when they're fluid and communication is good and everybody's getting to their goals, are how this transaction should be. We have had many people say, I listed my farm, or I tried to auction my farm, or we sold our farm, we tried it via sealed bid, and we didn't even get half the price what we thought we were going to get or what we were told for the property because it wasn't marketed properly. We never saw the marketing, we never talked to our agent, we never talked to our professionals. That's not the right way to sell a piece of real estate that's been owned by a family for 100 years, 150 years, 175 years. We have some farms that have been owned that long by families that we've sold for them, and you have to give that transaction the utmost respect and responsibility, because it's usually a giant financial transaction. The biggest financial transaction of our clients' lives usually are ones that we specialize in selling, and it's our job to make sure it gets done right. And it's the land professional or the real estate professional's job to make sure that it gets done right the first time, because the second time usually isn't as successful. And we sell farms that have failed all the time, where they said, I wish I would have called you 6 months ago. I wish I would have called you a year ago, 2 years ago. And we do our best with those farms to make them as enjoyable and as successful as possible. But you want to try to make the decision off the front side of that correctly, so it's a positive experience. There's no reason for this to be a negative experience whatsoever. So hiring a professional can be daunting. You can Google them, you can look at their websites, you can find them on social media. If they're good at land sales, they're more than likely selling, not just listing, other properties, and they're more than likely selling them many different ways. At High Point, it's really important for us to have 7, 8 different ways to sell farms and manage farms and appraise farms and do everything in the land real estate business, because it allows us to be on top of the market, and it allows us to focus on knowing what the prices are in the individual market, in the individual neighborhood, what the rents are, who the buyers are, who the sellers are, what the expected ROIs and sale prices are, so we know everything about the farm, so we can serve our clients best as humanly possible for this giant financial transaction that they've been tasked with selling the farm for their family's estate. There's usually also an executor or trustee named as the person in charge. Sometimes that is the individual at the family that was appointed as the estate executor or the trustee for the estate. So you want to identify that individual in the family or amongst the heirs. And then you also want to try to identify a decision maker or a couple decision makers in the family. There's some folks that may not want to deal with it, that are heirs to the estate, and there's some folks that would like to be very, very involved in the decision-making process. So deciding, do you want to be involved, or do you just want to let us know when it's closed and be paid for your inheritance out of this as an heir to the estate? Establishing that and having that conversation is also important to make sure that everybody wants to be involved or doesn't want to be involved. We like to involve as many people as we can, but we understand that people have other things going on in their lives and in businesses and live in other parts of the country or the world. And if we can help out and answer a lot of those questions and just keep people in the loop for clients, that makes everything that much easier on everybody. What I'll leave you with is the transactions in the land real estate category are usually the largest financial transactions of our clients' history. They tell us all the time, I wish we would have known you on our other sale, or we inherited farms on the other side of our family and I wish we would have worked with somebody as professional as you, or any of our agents or any of our staff. There's great companies out there that have great access to great buyers and have an exceptional knowledge base on the topic of forms and taxes and legal documents and structuring deals that are sold in specific ways to benefit you from a financial standpoint or from a tax standpoint or from a legacy holding standpoint. The details on this and the way that it's papered with the forms that are used and the knowledge from the agents that specialize in the niche because they've done it so many times or they've done it personally and they understand it because it's important to them and their family, just make the transaction so much more enjoyable for the people. And they tell us, make sure you tell people that there's a difference. They ask us to do good by good people, and that's what we really try to do at High Point, but we're putting out these videos and we're doing these things because we've been asked by clients that are very happy with the results on their sale or their farm management or their appraisal to tell the world about this. There's people out there that don't have the answers to these questions that get taken advantage of, and we're thankful we weren't taken advantage of, is what they tell us on a regular basis. So if you have a farm to sell, you've inherited a piece of farmland, you've inherited a piece of pasture land, a hunting tract, anywhere in the Midwest, Colorado, anywhere in the United States, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to any of our staff. We'd be happy to answer your questions because the difference in not doing it, if you look at it statistically, on the county assessor's websites where the land sells, on a regular basis, land sells for 50, 40, 30, 20, 10% below market value. And if a farm is valued at $10, $20, $30,000 an acre and it's 500 acres or 100 acres or 80 acres at whatever those price points are, you could be talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars if the farm isn't sold with care and isn't sold by a professional and doesn't have all the necessary steps to do the real estate company's absolute best, the trustee's best, the estate executor's best. This is a big financial transaction. More than likely the family is owned for a very long time. We need to, we feel like it deserves a lot of respect. So any questions you have, we'd be happy to answer them at any given time on the topic of selling farmland from an estate.